scripture today comes from the book of Galatians, Paul's letter to the Galatians, chapter 3, verses 26 through 29. In Christ Jesus, you are all children of God through faith. As many of you as were baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ. There is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male and female, for all of you are one in Christ Jesus. And if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to the promise. I'd like to welcome everyone here today as we celebrate worshiping together in the house of God for the first time in months. And I'd like to welcome those of you who will be seeing this at a later time. And thank you for sharing your time with us today. Today is Father's Day, and we celebrate the fathers among us. We missed Mother's Day. We weren't together in person, but we honor the mothers among us too. But Father's Days and Mother's Days aren't necessarily happy for everyone. There was an American artist named Norman Rockwell, and he painted pictures of idealized small towns and rural life. And everything was always perfect in Rockwell's pictures. And some of us maybe had that life where everything was pretty good. We had parents and grandparents and maybe step-parents, and they were all loving, and they were all sitting together at the dance recital or the ball game cheering us on. Some of us had that, and it's a blessing. But some of us had families that looked more like they might have been painted by Picasso than Rockwell. You know, most of the pieces are there, but they're not quite in the right order. They're mixed up. Some of them might be missing or repeated. Some of us had missing parents. Some through death, some from choice. Some of us had parents who tried their best, but because of addictions or mental illnesses, they couldn't do what was necessary. Some had parents who didn't even try, who were abusive or neglectful. But you know, we have one thing in common. We tend to still cling to our families and hope for the best, because we all need to belong. Amen. We need to be part of a family. Well, today's passage is good news for us, because no matter how warm and loving or cold and distant our blood families are, we are also part of God's family. In Christ Jesus, we are all children of God. Today, we're celebrating being with our church family again. And even though we're not quite back to normal and we can't do the handshakes and the hugs we usually do, even though we're still taking precautions, we're together. And we're doing what families do, and we're taking care of each other by keeping these precautions and doing our best. But we're together. But as much as this church family means to every one of us here, it's just a tiny part of the family of God. Background before we really get into this passage, I want to talk about what had been happening. And what had been happening was that some Gentile believers were being persuaded by Jewish believers to adopt circumcision and other observances of Jewish law. And they were being told that it was necessary for them to do this in order to be accepted into the family of God. And not necessarily criticizing the people who were suggesting that. That was the way they'd been raised. That was what they believed. wanted the best for these people, but Paul comes in and says, he writes this letter, he hears about it, he writes this letter, and he says, he reminds them that they received the Spirit by believing in Christ, not by doing the work of the law. And he tells them, and he tells us, that we're all children of God through faith. The law doesn't save us. It has wisdom for us. It has wisdom for living, but it doesn't save us. Faith in Christ saves us. Faith in Christ brings us into fellowship with Him and into the family. And he says, when you were baptized into Christ, you clothed yourself with Christ. And in early baptisms, they had a ritual where the newly baptized person was actually dressed in a white robe, which was to symbolize the righteousness of Christ that they had put on. Now, we don't do that every time anymore. Some denominations don't do that at all. But Elizabeth Johnson, who is a religious writer and speaker, she said that when we're baptized into Christ, we may not be covered with a white robe anymore, but we're covered with His grace.
Amen.
We're wrapped up in Him. We become part of Him. We become part of the family. And after we've been baptized into Christ, Christ identifies who we are. And all the other things that we use to identify ourselves become unimportant. But you know, we don't always like to hear that. People want to belong to a group that's exclusive. And some people, we seem to find reasons to separate ourselves. And Paul lists some of the things that they used to separate themselves in his day. There's no longer Jew or Greek. He says there's no longer slave or free. There's no longer male and female. Those were divisions that they used. If he were writing it to us today, he might say that we're neither black nor white, that we're neither rich nor poor, that we're neither gay nor straight, that we're neither conservative nor liberal. Those are the things that we use to divide ourselves today. And Paul would tell us that that doesn't matter anymore. So we can't have contact today, but I want us to just look around. Look around at everybody around you and just realize that everybody you see is loved by God.
Amen.
If you're watching this from somewhere else, look around you at the people that might be around you. You might be in your home or the subway or whatever, and realize that nobody you see is loved by God less than you. And nobody you see is loved by God more than you. We're all part of the family. Last Sunday actually, I had the opportunity to take part in an event as a member of the clergy, and we were properly masked and practiced our distancing, don't worry. But being me, I had conversations with a lot of people around me. 6 feet isn't enough to stop me from having a conversation. And I had a conversation with a Hispanic priest of an urban Episcopal church, with a black female pastor of an evangelical church, with a male professor of theology. And we had some interesting conversations, and so we found out that we had so much in common, even though we had such different backgrounds. And all that conversation, I got thirsty. asked a young woman, there were some bottles of water over there, and I asked this young woman if I could have one. She was kind of tending to that table. And she was about half my age, about half my size. She was a different race than me. And when I asked her if I could have that bottle of water, she said, I might tear up again. She said, you don't have to ask me, sister. We're family here. Help yourself to anything you need. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I teared up then, I teared up again. It was such a powerful moment for me because I realized she was speaking the truth. We were family, and it felt like family. And the difference is that we make so much of did not divide us. Those differences didn't fall away from us, and they don't fall away from us, but they make the family richer. They're not means to be separated from another. They're means to have a richer experience with lots of backgrounds and experiences combined. So today, on Father's Day, we are celebrating families. We're celebrating rejoining in God's house, worshiping together.
Amen.
But what's here isn't everything. This isn't the whole family. I've been recording my sermons on YouTube, and I've been watching live streams of other churches on social media, and some churches are doing Zoom calls, and they're reaching out in other ways, and talking with other pastors, which I've had more time to do. I've noticed, and they have noticed, that they have more followers than they ever had people in attendance at the building. People have been listening to the services and to the sermons that might not be comfortable coming to a church building. Maybe they've never been in one. Maybe they have had bad experiences. Maybe they think you have to come here and wear good clothes and sit still and be quiet. We don't know, but for whatever reason they haven't been coming to the church building. Maybe they work different shifts and can't come. They've been following on media. They've been hungry. And it tells me that when times are uncertain, when we're fearful, when we don't know what's going to happen, people are looking for answers. They're looking for community. They're looking for a place that they can belong. So even as we celebrate being able to come back here, and I'm so excited about it, and so enjoying seeing your beautiful faces out there again, we have to remember that we can't just retreat back to our buildings and get comfortable and get back to normal and forget that there are people in our communities who are hungry for what we have. They're hungry for the knowledge of belonging to Christ. They're hungry for the acceptance of our loving Lord. They may not even know that's what they're hungry for, but they are. They're hungry for membership in the family of God. So we have to continue to reach out, to offer our love and acceptance, not just in words, but in actions. I have a friend who has COVID-19, and she has 2 children. And she's been in quarantine, and she's been very ill. She hasn't had to be hospitalized, but she's been very ill. And the members of her church, and she belongs to one in this community, have been dropping off meals. And they've been making sure that she has the medicine that she needs. Those church members are showing the love of Christ. everyone who hears this today needs to find ways to show the love of Christ.
Amen.
Encourage every person who hears this to find some way to feed the hungry, to care for the sick, to encourage the downhearted. And when you do that, you're saying to everyone you meet, welcome home. We're so glad you're